Hello again, everyone. This is Chris with OverclockerClub, and we have the Shadow Rock LP from Be Quiet. This is a low-profile 130-watt cooler. If you know anything about Be Quiet, you know that they are the premier cooler and power supply manufacturer in Germany. So we'll go ahead and get this box open and take a look at this small but mighty cooler. Now we have the cooler and the components out of the box. We have the cooling fan here. We'll talk about it here in a moment. Cooler itself, and then the bag of installation hardware to cover our AMD and Intel sockets. Let's go over some of the features here. The weight of the fan with the cooler attached, or the cooler with the fan, however you want to look at it, is 395 grams. That comes in a little under a pound, so this is a pretty lightweight cooler. The socket compatibility goes from your 775, your 1151, 1150, 1155, 56, all the way up to your LGA 2011. And then on the AMD side, you've got your AM2+, AM3+, FM1, and FM2+. So it covers all your current modern sockets. The maximum power capacity, the TDP on this one is 130 watts. So this should handle the bulk of your mid-range CPUs. And the number of heat pipes, we've got 4 and 6. So let's take a look at the cooler itself in a little more detail here. You can see the top side of the cooler. It is fairly thin. We do have 2 little heat pipe fin stacks where the heat pipes terminate. We have a total of 4 heat pipes coming out on this side. We have 2 coming out on this side. So we effectively have 6 heat pipes that are capable of pulling the heat away from the base plate. And the base plate comes with this little protective cover. This cooler does come with the thermal paste already applied, and there are pluses and minuses to that. I do like it, but some people like to apply their own paste. It's easy enough to scrape off and put your own paste on there if you choose. The end of the cooler here, we have a nice brushed aluminum end cap. Our termination points for the heat pipes have these nice little caps on there. So we have a very attractive end piece. Looking at the bottom of the cooler here, we do have a couple of slots. These are for your mounting brackets, so we have to be able to get our screwdriver through there. And we have a fairly small plate on the bottom. It does have some extruded fins across the top there to help dissipate some of the heat. Let's look at the fan itself. This is a 120 millimeter 4-pin PWM fan. And now we'll take a look at the fan in a little more detail. Airflow across the Shadow Rock LP is provided by the Pure Wings 2 120 millimeter PWM fan. Now this fan is capable of running up to 1500 RPMs and delivering 87 cubic meters per hour, which is 51.4 cubic feet per minute. You can see we have the 4-pin plug there for your motherboard. The fan also draws 0.2 amps. The Shadow Rock LP is a very small cooler. It's a low-profile cooler, and the beauty of that is in low-profile cases or applications where we just don't have much room, our distance from our base to the top of the cooler with the fan, we're looking at about 72 millimeters, and that's a wonderful thing if you have a shallow case. Now the cooler comes with a little protective plastic cover here. The reason they provide that is not only to protect the base plate from being scratched, but this particular cooler comes with thermal paste already applied. Some people like that, some people don't. If you don't, you can easily scrape it off and apply your own thermal paste. Now if we look at the end of this cooler, we have the Be Quiet logo. We have a nice brushed aluminum end cap. We have 4 little caps that cover off the termination points for the heat pipes. And speaking of heat pipes, we do have copper heat pipes that go into the block. We have 4 pipes that go into the block. On one side, all 4 travel up to the top heat sink, and that heat will be removed when the air gets pushed down through the cooler. And then we also have 2 of the heat pipes that continue through the block and pass up into this little miniature fin stack at the bottom to also assist with removing heat. All right, we'll go ahead and get the fan attached to the cooler. We go ahead and put the little fan clips on the fan. They pop in there. I find it's easier if we push down here on these 2 little corners, and that allows the fan clip to snap into the groove there. Here, a little snap, and then we'll get the other side in there. That's snapped in. So now we have the fan attached to the cooler. We're ready to go ahead and install it into our case and check out the thermals on it. The key to this cooler, though, the claim to fame, is the low profile. From the base to the top of the fan, we're about 72 millimeters. The installation hardware includes the base plate for your Intel installations. We have the bag of miscellaneous fasteners for our Intel and AMD installations. We have a cross brace here, which holds the cooler itself down to the motherboard. We have a couple of fan clips, a couple more mounting brackets, and we even have a nice little wrench to help us out there with the installation. So we'll take a look at the installation here shortly. Alright, we have our Shadow Rock LP cooler installed here on our MSI Z87 GD65 motherboard. We are sitting on top of an Intel 4770K CPU. One of the nice things about this low profile cooler is that we do have plenty of room for all of our RAM. You can see the first slot there, which isn't populated, is perfectly clear, so we could populate all 4 slots and we don't have a large cooler that's overhanging it. You can see here a little bit of red peeking through there on the left. The cooler does overhang the VRM there. So the nice thing with this cooler also is that we will get some airflow coming down from the fan, which will blow across the motherboard components. And we'll go ahead and get the fan clips on there, get the fan installed. This cooler, however, is very small, so we can't expect it to perform like a cooler that's 2 or 3 times the size. It is made for very small, shallow, low-profile cases where there's not a lot of room and your cooling options are limited, like your home theater PCs, your HTPCs. It's not really made for a hardcore overclocking system, but I think you'll find that it would be just fine for a daily driver type of computer. So we'll go ahead and get the fan on and get the heat cranked up and see what this thing looks like. Alright, we have the system powered up here, and we'll get out the infrared camera here and sort of scan across it. Now we don't have a fan on it, so I just want to get some readings here. So it looks like we're around the 40° C across the top of the cooler here. We'll go ahead and put the fan on and see how things look. Alright, we have the fan installed. It is spinning away. We will go ahead and take a look at it again with the thermal camera and see what it looks like with the fan on it. And then we'll go ahead and get the heat cranked up and see how well this little cooler behaves. Alright, we have the heat turned up a little bit. You can see we're getting around 31, 32 degrees right around the surface of the fan here. It's hard to really get in on the cooler since the fan covers it all up. We got our thermal testing done, and we typically test these at normal CPU speed, and we put a load on it, and then we go ahead and put a mild overclock and put the same load so that we can really put some heat into the heat sink, into the cooler, and see how it performs. This cooler, at stock speeds with a load on it, I was bouncing off the 100° C upper limit, and I don't like to really push the CPU that hard. It's sort of pointless, just like going ahead and doing the overclock on this one. I just didn't even bother. Now, that's not to say this is a bad cooler. This cooler is not really designed for an application where you're going to be dumping an enormous amount of heat into it. We just have a very small cross-section. We have a very small number of fins. We do only have the 4 heat pipes and then the 2 coming out the other side here. Again, that doesn't make this a bad cooler at all. We have a niche for this type of cooler. As you can see, the low profile, it's made for a very small, very shallow case where you just don't have the room and your cooling options are limited. So this will be much better than stock cooling, but for a gaming system or a system that you're really going to be generating heat, Be Quiet offers several other coolers in the Dark Rock, Shadow Rock, Pure Rock families that are made. They're much larger coolers, but they're made for the higher heat that a gaming system or a system that you do a lot of number crunching that generates a lot of CPU heat. Those are the type of coolers. And actually, Be Quiet now has a liquid cooler out, so they've also jumped into the ring of liquid coolers. So, again, this is not a bad cooler at all. I like it. It just really needs to be more for a small case, a home theater, HTPC sort of a system. So, I hope you liked the review. This is Chris with OverclockerClub, and thanks for watching.